My brother ruined the hotel I saved. Later I made him regret it in the best way possible. The words still echoed in my mind like a haunting melody that refused to fade, each syllable carrying the weight of years spent pouring my soul into something that had become more than just a building. It was our family's legacy. Standing on the balcony of our boutique hotel, overlooking the azure waters of Lake Como where we grew up watching sunsets paint the sky in hues of gold and crimson, I couldn't help but reflect on how everything had changed so drastically. It all began 3 years ago when I made what everyone considered the most reckless decision of my life. At 28, I sold my luxurious penthouse condo in Milan, the one I'd worked tirelessly for, sacrificing weekends and holidays to build a successful interior design business, to save this very hotel from bankruptcy. My parents had invested every penny they had into transforming their small bed and breakfast into a 5-star establishment, only to watch it crumble under the weight of poor management decisions and mounting debts. When the bank threatened foreclosure, I didn't hesitate. I remembered my mother's tears as she sat in her office, surrounded by unpaid bills and collection notices, and knew I couldn't stand by while everything they'd built disappeared. The sale of my condo brought in enough to pay off the immediate debts and implement some much-needed renovations. I rolled up my sleeves alongside the staff, working 18-hour days to breathe new life into the property. We transformed outdated rooms into modern sanctuaries while preserving the charm that made our hotel unique. I personally oversaw every detail, from selecting fabrics that complemented the lake views to training staff in personalized guest service. Slowly but surely, our occupancy rates climbed, and positive reviews began flooding in. Within 2 years, we were turning a modest profit, and the hotel had regained its reputation as one of the region's premier destinations. But success has a way of attracting attention, especially from those who don't deserve it. My brother Marco, 4 years my senior, had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. While I was building my career in Milan, he had bounced from one failed venture to another, leaving a trail of disappointment behind him. Yet somehow, he always managed to maintain his position as the favored son. When he returned home after his latest business failure, claiming he wanted to reconnect with his roots, I should have seen the warning signs. But I was too busy celebrating our hotel's resurgence to notice the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Marco's presence initially seemed harmless enough. He would stroll through the lobby, offering unsolicited advice to staff and guests alike, positioning himself as some sort of hospitality expert despite having no real experience. At first, I dismissed his behavior as typical Marco posturing, but then he started implementing changes without consulting anyone. He fired our beloved head chef, replacing her with an old friend of his who turned out to be completely incompetent. He redirected marketing funds to sponsor local events that brought in minimal returns while neglecting our online presence. Worst of all, he convinced our parents to take out a substantial loan to finance an extravagant expansion project that wasn't financially viable. I watched in horror as the progress we'd made began to unravel. Our loyal staff grew demoralized under Marco's erratic leadership, and our once stellar reputation started to tarnish. Guests complained about inconsistent service and subpar dining experiences. The financial strain became unbearable, and we found ourselves teetering on the brink of disaster once again. Each setback felt like a personal betrayal, not just because of the work I'd put into saving the hotel, but because Marco had taken everything I'd built and thrown it away without a second thought. The breaking point came during one particularly disastrous week when 3 major conventions canceled their bookings due to poor reviews, and our occupancy rate plummeted to record lows. I confronted Marco in the hotel's garden, where we used to play as children. The confrontation ended with him accusing me of being jealous of his vision, and suggesting that perhaps I should return to Milan since I clearly didn't understand the family business. His words cut deeper than any knife could, not because they contained any truth, but because they revealed how little he valued everything I'd sacrificed for the hotel's survival. That night, unable to sleep, I found myself in the hotel's archives room, surrounded by decades-old photographs and documents chronicling our family's journey in hospitality. As I sifted through yellowed ledgers and faded guest books, I realized something crucial. This hotel wasn't just a business, it was a testament to generations of hard work, dedication, and love. My great-grandparents had started with nothing more than a few rented rooms above their cafe, building something that had sustained our family through wars, economic crises, and personal tragedies. The weight of that legacy settled upon my shoulders, and with it came a determination to fight for what was rightfully ours, not just for myself, but for every person whose livelihood depended on this hotel. The following morning, I called an emergency meeting with our core team members. In that dimly lit conference room overlooking the lake, I laid out my plan. We would need to make drastic changes, starting with restructuring our management approach and rebuilding our brand identity. Every department head nodded in agreement, their eyes reflecting both fear and hope. For the first time in months, I saw a spark of the passion that had once defined our operation. Together, we devised strategies to win back our loyal customers while attracting new ones, focusing on authentic experiences rather than Marco's misguided attempts at luxury. As we implemented our recovery plan, I made sure to document every decision, every improvement, and every success. I organized staff training sessions, emphasizing the importance of genuine hospitality over artificial grandeur. We restored our original menu concepts, incorporating local ingredients and traditional recipes that had once made our restaurant famous. I personally reached out to past guests, inviting them to experience the hotel's renewed spirit. Slowly but surely we began to see results. Positive feedback increased, repeat bookings rose, and our staff morale improved dramatically. Then came the day that would change everything. My parents called an unexpected staff meeting in the main ballroom. As I entered the room, I noticed Marco standing beside them, wearing an expression of smug satisfaction that sent chills down my spine. The staff gathered around, their faces reflecting a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. My mother stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly as she announced that, after careful consideration, they had decided to appoint Marco as the new CEO of the hotel. The room fell silent, the weight of their decision hanging in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. I stood frozen, feeling the blood drain from my face as realization dawned. All my efforts, all the sacrifices I'd made, all the progress we'd achieved, it meant nothing to them. They were willing to hand over everything to Marco, despite his proven track record of failure, simply because he was their son and heir apparent. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had saved the hotel from ruin only to watch it potentially destroyed again by the very person who had already nearly bankrupted it. As the initial shock wore off, anger began to simmer beneath my skin. Not just anger at Marco or my parents, but at the entire system that valued birthright over capability, tradition over innovation. I watched as Marco basked in the attention, accepting congratulations from staff members who clearly didn't believe in his abilities but felt compelled to maintain appearances. My parents looked at me expectantly, probably anticipating some gracious acceptance of their decision, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. Instead, I excused myself, retreating to the rooftop terrace where I often went to think. The cool evening breeze carried the scent of jasmine as I stared out at the lake, watching the lights of passing boats reflect on the water's surface. Memories flooded back, childhood summers spent helping in the kitchen, learning the art of hospitality from our grandmother, understanding that true luxury lay not in expensive furnishings but in making people feel genuinely cared for. These memories weren't just mine, they belonged to every staff member who had dedicated years of their lives to this place, to every guest who had created lasting memories within these walls. A soft voice interrupted my thoughts. It was Sophia, our longest-serving housekeeping manager, who had been with the hotel for over 20 years. Signorina Elena, she began, using the formal title that always made me smile, we know what you've done for this place. We remember when things were falling apart, and you came back to save us. Don't let them take that away from you. Her words were followed by others, Giuseppe from maintenance, Maria from the front desk, even young Luca who worked in the gardens, all expressing their support and belief in my leadership. Their faith in me ignited something deep within my soul. This wasn't just about proving my worth to my family anymore. It was about honoring the trust placed in me by those who truly understood what this hotel represented. As I looked at their hopeful faces, a plan began to form in my mind, one that would require courage, strategy, and unwavering determination. I realized that sometimes, the greatest victories come not from fighting against something, but from creating something better. The next morning, I arrived at the hotel before sunrise, determined to begin implementing my new strategy. I started by organizing a series of intimate gatherings with key staff members, listening to their concerns and ideas for improvement. Unlike Marco's top-down approach, I encouraged open dialogue and collaborative problem-solving. We formed specialized teams to address specific challenges, empowering employees to take ownership of their departments while maintaining clear communication channels throughout the organization. One of our first major initiatives focused on re-establishing relationships with local suppliers and artisans. I remembered how our grandmother used to source fresh produce directly from nearby farms and commission handmade furniture from local craftsmen. By reviving these connections, we not only supported the community but also created unique selling points that set us apart from larger chain hotels. Our guests began raving about the authenticity of their experiences, from the organic olive oil produced just miles away to the hand-carved wooden headboards in their rooms. Simultaneously, I launched a comprehensive training program emphasizing emotional intelligence and personalized service. We taught our staff to recognize and anticipate guests' needs before they were even expressed, creating moments of genuine connection that transformed ordinary stays into memorable experiences. The difference was palpable. Our TripAdvisor ratings soared, and word-of-mouth recommendations brought in a steady stream of new bookings. Financially, I implemented strict cost control measures while strategically reinvesting profits into areas that directly enhanced guest satisfaction. Rather than Marco's extravagant expansion plans, we focused on optimizing existing spaces, transforming underutilized storage areas into cozy reading nooks, converting unused terraces into intimate dining spaces. These changes required minimal investment but yielded maximum impact, demonstrating that innovation didn't necessarily mean spending more money. As our success grew, I made sure to document every achievement, every positive review, every satisfied guest testimonial. I created detailed reports showing how our new approach had stabilized finances, improved staff retention, and enhanced overall performance. These documents weren't just records, they were proof of concept, evidence that my methods worked where others had failed. During this time, I maintained a professional distance from Marco, choosing to focus on my work rather than engage in confrontations. However, I couldn't ignore the growing tension between us. He continued to make impulsive decisions, often countermanding established protocols and creating chaos in departments that were finally running smoothly. Staff members began approaching me privately, seeking guidance on how to handle conflicting instructions from the boss. Each instance reinforced my resolve to protect what we had built together. The situation came to a head during the annual Christmas Gala, traditionally our busiest and most prestigious event of the year. Marco had insisted on implementing several last-minute changes to the program, including an elaborate fireworks display that exceeded our budget and violated local noise ordinances. Despite my warnings, he proceeded with his plans, resulting in a disaster that left guests disappointed and staff frustrated. As I helped clean up the aftermath, both literally and figuratively, I realized that this pattern of reckless decision-making couldn't continue without jeopardizing everything we had worked so hard to rebuild. Determined to prevent further damage, I scheduled individual meetings with each department head, discussing contingency plans and establishing clear protocols for handling future conflicts. We developed a system of checks and balances, ensuring that critical decisions required consensus among senior staff members rather than unilateral approval from the CEO. While this approach occasionally led to tension with Marco, it ultimately protected the hotel's interests and maintained operational stability. Throughout these challenges, I found strength in the growing network of support around me. Our regular guests, many of whom had witnessed both the hotel's decline and resurgence, became vocal advocates for our new direction. They wrote glowing reviews, recommended us to friends, and even offered constructive feedback that helped us refine our services. Local business owners, grateful for our commitment to supporting the community, extended special offers and partnerships that benefited both parties. Perhaps most significantly, our staff rallied behind me with unwavering loyalty. They worked extra hours without complaint, shared innovative ideas during brainstorming sessions, and maintained high standards of service even during challenging times. Their dedication reminded me daily why I had fought so hard to save this hotel, not just for myself or my family, but for everyone who found purpose and pride in being part of something greater than themselves. As winter gave way to spring, I noticed subtle shifts in the atmosphere. Some longtime guests began requesting rooms specifically managed by certain staff members they had grown fond of. Others praised our ability to remember their preferences from previous visits, from pillow types to preferred hiking trails. These small victories accumulated, creating a momentum that felt unstoppable. Even some of Marco's closest allies within the organization started questioning his decisions, realizing that my approach consistently delivered better results. The turning point came unexpectedly during a routine staff meeting. As we reviewed quarterly performance metrics, it became evident that departments operating under my direct supervision consistently outperformed those managed by Marco. Occupancy rates were higher, guest satisfaction scores soared, and financial returns demonstrated clear ROI on our strategic investments. When presented with these facts, even my parents couldn't ignore the stark contrast between our approaches. Yet rather than confront the issue directly, they suggested a compromise. Marco would focus on external relations and marketing while I handled internal operations and guest experience. While this arrangement seemed reasonable on paper, I knew it wouldn't solve the underlying problem. Marco's interference continued, though now it manifested in different forms: questionable marketing campaigns, inappropriate promises to potential clients, and attempts to undermine my authority through subtle manipulation. Determined to create an irrefutable case for change, I initiated a comprehensive audit of all hotel operations, documenting every decision, its implementation, and its outcome. I involved independent consultants to validate our findings, ensuring that our conclusions were beyond reproach. The results were staggering. Areas under my management showed consistent growth and improvement, while those influenced by Marco's decisions remained stagnant or declined further. Armed with this evidence, I prepared for what I knew would be the most crucial conversation of my life. I arranged a private meeting with my parents, choosing the same garden where Marco and I had argued months earlier. As I laid out the documented proof of our contrasting management styles and their respective impacts on the hotel's performance, I watched their expressions shift from skepticism to concern, and finally to understanding. Their response, however, wasn't what I expected. Instead of immediately removing Marco from his position, they proposed a 6-month trial period during which we would divide responsibilities more formally, with clear performance metrics to evaluate our effectiveness. While frustrating, I recognized this as progress, a tacit acknowledgement that my approach warranted serious consideration. During these months, I implemented several innovative initiatives that would serve as test cases for our new management structure. We launched a sustainability program that reduced waste while enhancing guest experiences through eco-friendly practices. We introduced a mentorship system pairing experienced staff with new hires, improving both retention rates and service quality. Most significantly, we developed a community engagement strategy that positioned the hotel as a cultural hub for local artists and performers, attracting a younger demographic without alienating our traditional clientele. Each success strengthened my position while highlighting the limitations of Marco's leadership style. Guests began specifically requesting services and amenities developed under my direction, and staff morale reached unprecedented levels. Even Marco's closest supporters within the organization started gravitating toward my initiatives, recognizing their tangible benefits. As the trial period neared its conclusion, I found myself reflecting on how far we had come. What had begun as a desperate attempt to save a failing business had evolved into a movement, a testament to the power of authentic leadership, collaborative innovation, and unwavering dedication to excellence. The hotel had transformed from a mere accommodation provider into a living, breathing entity that reflected the best aspects of our community and culture. Standing on the balcony once more, watching the sun dip below the horizon and paint the lake in shades of amber and rose, I realized that this journey had never been about proving anyone wrong. It was about proving something right, about demonstrating that true leadership isn't inherited, it's earned through sacrifice, vision, and an unshakable commitment to doing what's best for the greater good. And as I prepared for the final evaluation meeting that would determine the hotel's future direction, I knew that whatever happened next, I had already succeeded in ways that mattered most. The day of the final evaluation meeting arrived with an air of inevitability, as though the universe itself had aligned to bring us to this moment. The ballroom where we gathered felt smaller than usual, its grand chandeliers casting a warm glow over the tense atmosphere. My parents sat at the head of the long mahogany table, their expressions unreadable but tinged with something I hadn't seen before: hesitation. Marco stood beside them, his usual swagger replaced by a forced confidence that didn't quite reach his eyes. Around the table were key staff members, department heads, and even a few trusted guests who had been invited to provide their perspectives. I took my seat, feeling neither triumph nor anxiety, just a quiet resolve. This wasn't about revenge or vindication, it was about doing what was right for the hotel, for the people who depended on it, and for the legacy we all shared. As the meeting began, my father cleared his throat and addressed the room. "Today," he said, his voice steady but softer than usual, "we will review the results of the past 6 months and make a decision about the future leadership of this hotel." What followed was a presentation unlike any other, a meticulous breakdown of every metric, initiative, and outcome from both sides of the trial period. First, Marco presented his accomplishments: flashy marketing campaigns, partnerships with luxury brands, and ambitious plans for expansion. But when questioned further, the cracks became evident. His initiatives had failed to generate sustainable revenue, alienated loyal customers, and drained resources without delivering proportional returns. Even some of his staunchest supporters shifted uncomfortably in their seats as the numbers spoke louder than words. Then it was my turn. With Sophia's help, I had prepared a comprehensive report filled not only with data but also with stories, guest testimonials, employee feedback, and examples of how our collaborative efforts had transformed the hotel into a thriving community hub. I showed photos of local artisans teaching workshops in our newly renovated event space, highlighted glowing reviews praising our personalized service, and shared financial reports showing steady growth despite challenging market conditions. Most importantly, I emphasized the human element, the smiles of returning guests, the pride of staff members who felt valued and empowered, and the sense of belonging that permeated every corner of the property. When I finished speaking, there was a palpable shift in the room. It wasn't just admiration or approval, it was recognition. Recognition of the truth we had all known deep down, that leadership isn't about titles or inheritance, it's about vision, empathy, and the ability to inspire others to achieve greatness together. My mother broke the silence first. "Elena," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "you've done more for this hotel than anyone could have asked. We were wrong to doubt you." Her admission hung in the air like a fragile thread, connecting the past to the present. My father nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on me with a mixture of regret and newfound respect. "We let pride blind us," he admitted. "And in doing so, we almost lost everything." Marco, for once, remained silent. Gone was the arrogance, replaced by a look of resignation, and perhaps, somewhere beneath the surface, understanding. He glanced at me briefly, his expression unreadable, before lowering his eyes to the table. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of sympathy for him. Despite everything, he was still my brother, and I knew he hadn't acted out of malice but rather insecurity and misplaced ambition. After a long pause, my father continued. "Effective immediately, Elena will assume full responsibility as CEO of the hotel. Marco will step down from his position but remain involved in an advisory capacity, focusing on areas where his skills can complement rather than conflict with our goals." The announcement was met with applause, not the polite kind reserved for formalities, but the genuine heartfelt kind that comes from witnessing justice being served. In the weeks that followed, the transition unfolded smoothly. Marco surprised everyone by embracing his new role with humility, working closely with me to repair relationships and contribute meaningfully to projects that aligned with his strengths. Our parents, too, underwent a transformation, becoming more open-minded and supportive as they witnessed firsthand the positive impact of collaborative leadership. Together, we began rebuilding not just the hotel but also our family dynamic, one conversation and shared experience at a time. Under my leadership, the hotel flourished beyond anything I had imagined. We expanded thoughtfully, adding eco-friendly cottages nestled among the trees and hosting cultural festivals that drew visitors from around the world. Our focus on sustainability earned us numerous awards, while our commitment to authenticity kept guests coming back year after year. Staff turnover plummeted, and morale soared as employees felt truly invested in the hotel's success. But perhaps the most rewarding change was within myself. I had started this journey driven by necessity and determination, but along the way, I discovered something far greater: purpose. Saving the hotel wasn't just about preserving a building or a business, it was about creating a home, a sanctuary, a place where people could connect, dream, and belong. And through that process, I found my own place in the world, not as someone defined by sacrifice or struggle, but as someone capable of inspiring others to believe in themselves and their potential. One evening, as I stood on the balcony overlooking the lake, Marco joined me. We stood side by side in comfortable silence, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Finally, he spoke. "You know," he said, his tone uncharacteristically sincere, "I never understood why you cared so much about this place. But now I see it's not just a hotel, it's part of who you are." He paused, then added with a small smile, "And maybe in some ways it's part of who I am too." I looked at him, seeing not the rival who had once tried to undermine me, but my brother, flawed, imperfect, yet capable of growth. "It's part of all of us," I replied. "That's what makes it worth fighting for." As the stars emerged one by one, reflecting off the tranquil waters of Lake Como, I realized that this story wasn't just about saving a hotel or proving a point. It was about resilience, forgiveness, and the enduring power of love, for family, for community, and for the dreams that bind us together. And though challenges would undoubtedly arise in the future, I face them with unwavering faith in the strength of those bonds and the knowledge that true success is measured not by titles or accolades, but by the lives we touch and the legacies we leave behind.